Are you lying to yourself? I mean, let's be honest. Are you just deluding yourself? Well, you're in luck because today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at how to stop deluding yourself and lying to yourself and fooling yourself. Because guess what? You're the easiest person for yourself to fool. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. What's going on, Danny?
What's up, Randy?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. We kind of touched on this a few weeks ago about the problems with honesty. But today we're going to be going over a few quick fixes each into how to stop deluding yourself. Let me ask you, have you ever found yourself lying to yourself or deluding yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all have. I think it'd be lying to myself to say otherwise. You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. That would have been a good answer. Been like, nope, never lied to myself. Totally 100% honest all the time.
I've always been
Yeah.
authentic ever since the day I was born.
Yeah. Well, so we're going to share a few quick
Uh,
fixes today to hopefully help everyone stop deluding themselves. So my first one is to actually just sit down and ask yourself, how am I lying to myself? And this is something that I actually found was pretty helpful, like after meditating or after doing like Wim Hof breathing, when you're kind of
yeah.
like very centered, very deep, you can ask, how am I lying to myself? Because you can start to really pick out like the small things, like the things that you wanted to do, but maybe you're like, oh, I can't do that. That's too hard. Or whatever it is, you start to see these things that like, am I really being honest with myself? Am I deluding myself?
I like that one too, because I think if you just starting the practice of asking the question too, you might start out recognizing like, yeah, like little things, like, maybe not super consequential or important ones, but it gets you the sort of ball rolling, so you start to actually think this way. And then you start seeing the bigger things where you're actually lying to yourself in more crucial ways that are affecting your life. So yeah, I think that's a really good one. I mean, you always have to start with asking questions or we never get anywhere.
Boom.
Yeah, I like that. My first one goes back to something that we talked about before with Zarathustra and the Three Metamorphoses, the idea of saying no to, the obligations, the burdens that we take on that are not our own. And this is a hard one, but it's also an important one, I think. And it goes back to also asking yourself, how am I lying? Asking yourself, what values, what obligations, what things am I sort of holding myself to that aren't really mine and aren't a result of me or my reasons, but really from the outside world. And they're things I don't even agree with. I think finding that out is also a good way to start freeing yourself to find your own path and be honest.
Yeah, that's a great one. And I actually was listening to a audiobook where they were talking about just that, how on Oprah they had Lisa Kudrow, I think it was, and somebody else. And Oprah asked them, what's the hardest thing you've had to learn in your life so far? And they've already been, successful careers,
Yeah.
acting, doing whatever else. And they're like, learning to say no. And Oprah was like, yeah, I think that's the same for me. Learning to say no.
Super successful, but yeah, you take on way too much. It's funny, but we can all do it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that's a great one. My next one for how to stop deluding yourself is look in your life with what's causing you the most stress. And I'm going to guess that something in that area, you are lying to yourself, or you're kidding yourself, or you're deluding yourself.
Yeah.
Like we touched on this a while back, where it was like anytime you're stressed, just most of the time you know what you need to do, and you're just not doing it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
take a look at those areas where you're stressed in your life, or particularly, like I know personally for me, back when I used to get really depressed, it was partially because I was lying to myself about my life. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I kind of like cleared that up and started taking control of my life and living intentionally that a lot of that depression lifted. So I think those are two areas, like where are you stressed, where are you depressed or upset? Those are great areas to look where you're deluding yourself.
No, it's funny when you first said that, the first thing that popped in my mind, for me at least, is like the way I used to handle my student loans was just basically lying to myself. And then the stress would build and build, and then you get this anxiety and this depression. Yeah. And it's funny too, I think you make a good point as well, which is like, our depression stuff so often is just tied to these things that we're lying about and not admitting, and we're justifying it, we're finding reasons that don't put any blame on us and everything. And, it ultimately just makes the situation worse. Once you start dealing with it, though, you start to feel better. It doesn't mean like things get immediately better, but you feel better because you're actually being honest and taking care of it. I think that's a good one. I like that.
Absolutely. And you can
Um,
like when you do get honest with yourself, like you can literally feel the weight lift. It's like this
yeah,
emotional weight just lifts off of you immediately. You feel it. And it's just like
yeah.
all that pain and anguish and everything is just gone instantaneously once you stop lying to yourself.
And it's so funny. It could be like one phone call is all you really needed to do to make that happen.
But you can put it off forever.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing how deep the hole is we can dig, isn't it? Before we actually
Right?
bother to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. Um, my second one we talked. I mean, we talked about this before, but I think it's a good one. Something you mentioned a long time ago, which is journal your goals daily. Like, write down a list of like 5 or 10 goals every day. Don't necessarily look at the list from the day before. Just keep writing it, and you'll start to see over time this sort of repetition of ideas, of dreams, of things that you want, and then those are the things that you should really go after because they're the ones that really speak to, I think, your long term or a deeper self, like what you align with and what you want to be. And I think that's a great way to find that out.
That's a great one because I think so many people delude themselves in this area where they're like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be this. I want to be that. And then they do absolutely nothing in that domain. But writing down your goals, like you mentioned there, is a great way just to have that daily repetition, being like, if I say that this is important to me, wouldn't it be helpful to spend some of my time today actually going in that direction?
Actually doing it. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And there's just something magical about writing it down where like it ends up happening so much more quickly and with
Oh
so
yeah.
much less effort than you could ever imagine just from writing it down and particularly doing it regularly.
You
Like
make
I
it real
remember,
though. It's like I swear, it's like you do something, it's like somehow it makes it real and then your brain starts thinking about not just the idea, but how to get it done. And you start doing it.
yeah,
It's like
I remember these goals that I had that seemed unreasonable when I first wanted them. But I wrote them down and I just wrote them down every day. And also like with the goals, I would write down a date when I wanted to accomplish it by, when I thought it was like reasonable to accomplish it by.
yeah.
And dude, every single one of them like happens way sooner than I ever thought was
It
possible, which is just crazy, but it's like the magic of the
is,
universe.
yeah.
Mhm.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, which brings me to my third point for how to stop deluding yourself. Uh, ask yourself, do a lot of people keep telling you the same thing and you just don't agree with it at all? Like, let's say people just tell you you're obnoxious and you're like, no way, not possible, not me. Or maybe
Yeah.
people are always like, why are you so angry? And you're like, I don't have an anger problem. Get it. So, like, starting to look at these areas where maybe a lot
Yeah.
of people are commenting and be like, maybe that's something I need to look into.
Yeah. I like that one too, because it's like it's listening to actually what's being said about you and listening or being more like sensitive to how people are interacting with you to get because I mean there is some truth to it usually, and especially things like that. I mean there's definitely going to be some truth. Yeah.
Well, what I love is it's like, okay, so either 20 other people are completely wrong or I'm wrong. Yeah, it's got to be the other people. They have no
It's
idea what
them.
they're talking about.
It's always that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's funny. I like that one. My last one is face your responsibility. So I think this is important too, just like, admitting to yourself and being honest with yourself about, what you're responsible for, where you might be messed up or what you need to do and stop running from it. Start taking a more, intentional path in life and just stop looking for excuses. I think that's so important. If you want to stop deluding yourself, you have to stop looking for excuses, stop blaming others, and just start dealing with your life.
That's a great one too. When I remember, I very specifically remember where I was and when I was listening to a book called Extreme Ownership, and it's basically what you're talking about there, like taking full responsibility for everything in your life. And like that, listening to that book was a very clear turning point for me because it was at that point where I just completely said, okay, being a victim is done. I'm just everything that's happened to me, I'm just going to act as if I'm 100% responsible. And it very clearly was a changing point in my life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's insane, dude. It's crazy. And it's funny because it's like you start having the power to do things instead of not doing. I mean, that's just it, right? You're just switching from being totally impotent to actually having the ability to do things and finding out how to do them and start doing them. I mean, it's like it's amazing the shift. But like I think that's the biggest block for a lot of people is this idea that, that it's not their fault, that it must be something else wrong with the world or, others or whatever. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly a comfortable position to take until you're sitting in your own dirty diaper and you're like,
Yeah.
Maybe I'll change. Yeah. So there we go. There you have it. 6 quick tips for how to stop deluding yourself. I hope you found that helpful. I know that I certainly did. So this is the Existential Stoic podcast. Make sure to listen on all the podcasting services. Check us out on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. We will catch you later in the week. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.